Commander Vexhai stood before the massive viewing screen on the bridge of his warship. The image showed a green and blue planet spinning slowly in space. Kepler 442b looked peaceful from this distance, too peaceful for his liking. "Show me the surface scans again," he ordered his intelligence officer. The screen changed to show aerial views of the planet's surface. Rolling hills covered in neat rows of crops stretched as far as the eye could see. Small buildings dotted the landscape. Humans moved between the fields like tiny ants, carrying tools and driving simple machines. "The same as yesterday, Commander," said Lieutenant Kreshita, checking her datapad. 47,000 humans spread across 12 settlement zones. They grow something called wheat and corn, very basic farming operations. Vexhai's four eyes narrowed as he studied the images. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 63 worlds in the past 20 years. Most species fought back with everything they had. Some tried to hide. A few even tried to bargain. But humans just kept farming. "What about their technology?" he asked. "Primitive," Kreshta replied. "We detected some metalworking facilities and basic power generation. Nothing that could threaten our ships. They use ground vehicles for transportation and simple machines for their farming work." The commander walked closer to the screen. He had been watching this planet for 3 months now. His orders were clear: monitor the human colony and report any military activity. So far there had been none. "Sir," another officer called from across the bridge, "we're receiving the daily intelligence report from our spy drones. Put it on screen." The view switched to footage recorded earlier that day. Humans worked in the fields under the bright yellow sun. They wore simple clothes and carried basic tools. Some drove large machines that moved slowly through the crops, cutting and gathering the plants. Vexhai watched a group of humans gather around one of their machines. It had stopped working and they were trying to fix it. One human lay on his back underneath the machine while others handed him tools. They looked frustrated but not worried. "Look at them," Vexhai said to his crew. "They care more about their broken farming equipment than the fact that an alien fleet is watching them from space." The intelligence officer nodded. "Our psychological analysis suggests they are a peaceful species focused on survival through agriculture. They show no signs of military organization or aggressive behavior." On the screen, the humans finally got their machine working again. They cheered and patted each other on the back before returning to their work. Children ran between the adults, playing games and helping with small tasks. "What about their settlements?" Vexhai asked. The view changed to show one of the human towns from above. Small houses surrounded a central area with larger buildings. Roads connected different parts of the town in a neat grid pattern. Gardens and small farming plots filled the spaces between buildings. "Very organized," Kreshta observed. "They build everything in straight lines and right angles. Each settlement has the same basic layout. Central area for gathering, smaller areas for families, and farming plots around the outside." Vexhai studied the pattern. It reminded him of something, but he could not quite place what. "Show me their daily routine." The screen displayed a time-lapse video of human activity over 24 hours. As the sun rose, humans emerged from their buildings and moved to different areas. Some went to the fields, others to workshops, and some gathered in the central areas. "They follow a very strict schedule," the intelligence officer explained. "Work begins at sunrise and continues until sunset with breaks for meals. They rotate between different activities throughout the week." "Rotate?" "Yes, sir. Each human seems to work in different areas at different times. One day they might work in the grain fields, the next day in the workshops, and the day after that in what appears to be maintenance duties." Vexhai found this interesting. Most farming species specialized in specific jobs, but these humans seemed to learn multiple skills. "What do they do for defense?" "Nothing that we can detect," Kreshta said. "No weapons, no fortifications, no military training. They have some basic tools that could be used as weapons in an emergency, but nothing designed for fighting." The commander thought about this. The Zephyrian Empire's standard procedure was to send a small force to test enemy defenses before launching a full invasion. But what if there were no defenses to test? "Sir," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from Admiral Kethmore's flagship." On screen. The viewing screen changed to show the stern face of Admiral Kethmore. His purple skin gleamed under the bridge lights of his command ship. Behind him, Vexhai could see the busy activity of the fleet's main bridge. "Commander Vexhai," the admiral said, "what is your current assessment of the human colony?" "No military threat detected, Admiral. They appear to be focused entirely on agricultural activities. Our spy drones have been monitoring them for 3 months without detecting any weapons or defensive preparations. Admiral Kethmore's expression did not change. The High Command is becoming impatient. We need to move forward with the occupation of the Kepler system. How many troops would you recommend for the human colony? Vexhai looked at his intelligence reports one more time. Based on their numbers and lack of military organization, I would estimate that 10,000 troops would be more than sufficient. They might not even resist. Excellent. Prepare your preliminary assessment report. The fleet will move to the next phase of operations within the month. The transmission ended and Vexhai turned back to the planet display. Something still bothered him about the human settlement patterns, but he could not identify what it was. The neat rows of crops, the organized settlements, the strict daily schedules, it all seemed too perfect somehow. Lieutenant, he said to Kreshta, run a comparison analysis. Compare the human settlement patterns to known military base layouts in our database. Sir, just do it. While she worked, Vexhai continued studying the human activities. He watched them move through their daily routine with mechanical precision. Every human seemed to know exactly where to go and what to do at any given time. Commander, Kreshta said after several minutes. The computer found some similarities, but nothing significant. The human settlements show organizational patterns similar to military bases, but that could be explained by their need for efficient farming operations. Vexhai nodded slowly. Efficient farming operations. That made sense. These humans were simply very good at organizing their work. There was nothing suspicious about that. He looked at the peaceful scene on the screen one more time. Humans worked in their fields as the sun began to set on their world. Soon they would gather for their evening meal and then rest until the next day brought more farming work. Continue monitoring, he ordered his crew. I want detailed reports on all human activities until we receive orders to proceed. As the bridge crew returned to their duties, Vexhai remained standing before the viewing screen. The humans below continued their simple lives, unaware that their peaceful world was about to change forever. He had no way of knowing that the farmers were watching his ships just as carefully as he was watching them. Hidden sensors tracked every Zephyrian vessel. Encrypted communications carried detailed reports about alien ship movements and capabilities. And in underground facilities disguised as root cellars and storage barns, the most advanced military minds in human space were planning something that would change the course of the war. But all Vexhai could see were farmers working in their fields under an alien sun. The morning sun cast long shadows across the wheat fields of Settlement 7. To any observer from space, it looked like another ordinary day on the human farming colony. Workers moved between the rows of grain, checking the plants and making small repairs to their equipment. Marcus Chen wiped sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the settings on his combine harvester. The massive machine looked like any other piece of farming equipment, but hidden beneath its simple exterior were modifications that would have impressed military engineers across the galaxy. "How's the calibration coming?" asked Sarah Martinez, walking up to his machine. She carried a clipboard and wore the same simple work clothes as everyone else in the settlement. "Almost finished," Marcus replied, climbing down from the driver's seat. "The new targeting system integrates perfectly with the harvesting mechanisms. From the outside, it still looks like we're just cutting wheat." Sarah nodded and made a note on her clipboard. She was officially the settlement's agricultural coordinator, but her real job was much more complex. Before coming to Kepler 442b, she had been a colonel in the Human Colonial Defense Force, specializing in covert operations. "The aliens are still watching," she said quietly. "Drone flyover about an hour ago. Same pattern as yesterday." Marcus looked up at the clear blue sky. Somewhere up there, Zephyrian spy drones recorded everything they did. The key was to give them exactly what they expected to see while preparing for something entirely different. "Any word from command?" he asked. "Phase 2 starts next week. We'll begin rotating the weapons specialists through the south fields. To the aliens, it'll look like we're preparing for harvest season." Marcus smiled. Harvest season. If only the Zephyrians knew what kind of harvest the humans were really planning. Across the settlement, other farmers went about their daily work. In the machine shop, former tank mechanics worked on equipment that could plow fields or destroy enemy armor with equal efficiency. The workshop looked peaceful from above, but it housed some of the most advanced military technology in human space. Jake Morrison bent over a workbench, carefully installing new components in what appeared to be a simple irrigation pump. The device would actually serve as a communications relay, connecting the settlement to a network that spanned the entire planet. "Hand me that wrench," he said to the young woman working beside him. Elena Vasquez passed him the tool without looking up from her own project. She was assembling what looked like a weather monitoring station, but the sensors inside could track spacecraft movements across the entire system. "The new kids are adapting well," Elena said. "Yesterday's arrivals from Earth are already learning the farming routine." Jake nodded. Every month, new colonists arrived on supply ships. The Zephyrians saw peaceful farmers seeking a new life. In reality, they were highly trained specialists, joining what would become the largest military operation in human history. The newest arrivals included former Special Forces operators, military engineers, and intelligence specialists. Each one had spent months learning enough about farming to maintain their cover while preparing for their real mission. In the settlement's central area, a group of humans gathered around a large table covered with what appeared to be crop rotation charts. Dr. Amanda Foster pointed to different sections of the map while explaining planting schedules to the newcomers. "The North Fields will be ready for winter wheat in 6 weeks," she said. "That means we'll need to rotate the heavy equipment teams through that area." To any alien observer, it was a simple discussion about farming schedules. But the crop rotation was actually a complex training program that moved military specialists through different areas of expertise. The heavy equipment teams were armored vehicle crews. The winter wheat was code for winter warfare training, and the planting schedules determined when different military units would be ready for combat operations. Dr. Foster had been a military strategist before becoming a farmer. Her specialty was logistics, the complex science of moving supplies, equipment, and personnel where they needed to be at exactly the right time. "What about the southern settlements?" asked one of the newcomers, a man named David Park who had arrived on yesterday's supply ship. "They're focusing on root vegetables this season," Dr. Foster replied. "Deep cultivation techniques. Very labor-intensive." David nodded as if he understood farming. In reality, he was a former demolitions expert, and deep cultivation meant underground facility construction. The root vegetables were weapons storage bunkers being built beneath the farmland. As the meeting ended, the humans dispersed to their assigned work areas. To maintain their cover, they actually did grow crops and tend livestock. The food was real, the farming work was genuine, and the agricultural knowledge they had learned was practical and useful. But every farming activity served a dual purpose. Plowing fields created concealed defensive positions. Building barns provided cover for weapons storage. Digging irrigation channels established communication lines and supply routes. The genius of the operation was its simplicity. The humans had taken normal farming activities and adapted them to military purposes without changing their outward appearance. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Martinez walked through the wheat fields, checking on the afternoon work teams. She carried a radio that looked like a simple farming communication device, but could actually coordinate military operations across the entire planet. "Team Alpha, how's the soil testing progressing?" she said into the radio. "Good results in Sector 7, came the reply. "The ground is firm enough for heavy equipment deployment." To alien listeners, it sounded like a routine conversation about farming conditions. But soil testing meant reconnaissance missions, and heavy equipment deployment referred to positioning artillery units. Sarah continued her walk through the settlement. Children played in the yards between houses while adults worked in gardens and small workshops. It looked like a thriving community of peaceful farmers. But many of the children were actually young adults trained in intelligence gathering and sabotage. The gardens concealed sensor arrays and communication equipment, and the workshops produced both farming tools and military hardware using the same equipment. As evening approached, the settlement began its daily routine of community meals and social gatherings. Families came together to share food and discuss the day's work. Children played games while adults planned the next day's activities. The Zephyrian spy drones recorded it all, adding to the months of intelligence data that painted the humans as harmless farmers focused on simple agricultural work. But in underground meeting rooms disguised as root cellars, a different kind of planning was taking place. Military commanders reviewed intelligence reports about Zephyrian fleet movements. Weapons specialists calculated ammunition requirements for different battle scenarios. Communication officers coordinated with similar settlements across the planet. The humans had been preparing for this moment since the first colonists arrived 3 years ago. Every day of farming work had been training for war. Every peaceful routine had been practice for military operations. And now, as the Zephyrian Empire prepared to move against what they believed was a defenseless farming colony, the humans were ready to show them just how wrong they could be. The harvest season was about to begin, and the crop the humans had been growing was unlike anything the aliens had ever imagined. Admiral Kethmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the final preparations for the invasion of Kepler 442b. Around him, the Zephyrian Fourth Fleet moved into attack formation. 50,000 troops aboard transport ships waited for the order to begin their descent to the planet below. "Fleet status report," he commanded. "All ships ready for deployment," Admiral reported his tactical officer. 3 battle cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 47 transport vessels. "Ground forces are prepared for immediate landing operations." Kethmore nodded with satisfaction. It was far more firepower than needed for a simple farming colony. But the High Command wanted a quick, decisive victory. The humans would surrender within hours, and the Zephyrian Empire would claim another world. Intelligence update on the surface? "No changes, sir. The humans continue their normal farming activities. Our latest drone scans show increased activity around their storage facilities, but that appears to be normal harvest preparation." On the viewing screen, Kethmore could see the peaceful green world spinning below. The human settlements looked as harmless as ever. Workers moved through the fields, children played in the yards, and smoke rose from cooking fires in the early morning air. "Begin the assault," he ordered. Across the fleet, Zephyrian warriors prepared for battle. They loaded their weapons, checked their equipment, and reviewed the landing plans one final time. Most expected the operation to be completed before the day was over. The first wave of assault shuttles launched from the transport ships, carrying elite troops toward the planet's surface. Their mission was simple: secure the main human settlements and prepare for the arrival of occupation forces. As the shuttles entered the planet's atmosphere, their pilots reported normal conditions. No defensive fire, no enemy aircraft, no signs of military resistance. The humans appeared to be going about their daily routines as if nothing was happening. Captain Zexatel commanded the lead assault shuttle heading for Settlement 7. Through his viewing port, he could see the neat rows of crops and the small buildings of the human community. Everything looked exactly as the intelligence reports had described. "Approaching Landing Zone Alpha," he reported to the fleet. "No enemy contact. Proceeding with standard insertion protocol." The shuttle descended toward what appeared to be an empty field about a kilometer from the main settlement. The landing zone had been chosen for its clear terrain and strategic position near the human population center. As the shuttle's landing gear extended, Captain Zextel noticed something odd. The field below showed perfect parallel lines running in neat rows, just like the farming areas they had observed from space. But something about the pattern seemed different from this closer viewpoint. 30 seconds to touchdown," announced his pilot. Through his window, Zextel could see human figures working in the distant fields. They seemed to be continuing their farming activities despite the arrival of alien warships. Either they were remarkably calm or they had not yet realized what was happening. The shuttle touched down with a soft bump, and the rear cargo door began to open. Zextel and his warriors prepared to disembark and begin securing the area. That was when the field exploded into action. The furrows between the crop rows suddenly opened like mechanical flowers, revealing hidden weapons positions. What had appeared to be irrigation ditches were actually concealed trenches filled with armed humans. The farming equipment scattered across the landscape transformed into military vehicles and artillery pieces. "Ambush," Zextel shouted into his communicator. But his transmission was cut short as heavy weapons fire erupted from all directions. His shuttle shuddered under the impact of anti-aircraft missiles launched from concealed positions. Similar explosions echoed across the battlefield as other Zephyrian shuttles fell victim to the same trap. Across the planet, identical scenes played out at every planned landing zone. The humans had anticipated exactly where the aliens would try to land and had prepared devastating surprises at each location. In Settlement 7, Sarah Martinez stood in what had appeared to be a grain storage silo. but was actually a sophisticated command center. Screens around her showed the battle unfolding across multiple locations as human defenders engaged the Zephyrian invasion force. "All units report successful engagement," said Marcus Chen, monitoring communications from the various battle zones. "The aliens walked right into every trap." Sarah nodded grimly. 3 years of preparation were finally paying off. Every aspect of their farming operation had been designed for this moment. The combine harvesters that had appeared to be slowly cutting grain were actually mobile artillery platforms. Their harvesting mechanisms had been replaced with advanced weapons, systems capable of destroying enemy aircraft, and ground vehicles. The irrigation systems that had seemed so essential for crop production were actually elaborate networks of defensive positions connected by underground tunnels. Human defenders could move between positions without being seen from above while maintaining coordinated fields of fire. Even the livestock had a role to play. What the aliens had observed as cattle and sheep were actually sophisticated decoy systems designed to mask the heat signatures of hidden military equipment. "Sir," called Elena Vasquez from her position at a sensor console, "we're detecting additional alien shuttles launching from the fleet. Looks like they're trying to reinforce their ground forces." "Let them come," Sarah replied. "We've got plenty more surprises waiting." She activated her command radio and spoke to military units positioned across the settlement. "All teams prepare for Phase 2. The aliens are sending reinforcements right where we want them." The radio crackled with acknowledgments from dozens of hidden positions. Former Special Forces operators reported ready from concealed bunkers. Artillery crews confirmed target acquisition from their disguised positions. Air defense teams prepared to engage the incoming enemy reinforcements. On his flagship, Admiral Kethamore watched in growing horror as his carefully planned invasion turned into a disaster. More than half of his first wave shuttles had been destroyed or damaged, and the human farmers were systematically dismantling his ground forces. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence reports showed no military capabilities." His tactical officer studied the incoming battle reports with disbelief. "Admiral, the humans appear to have concealed an entire military base beneath their farming operations. Our sensors never detected the underground facilities or the hidden weapons positions." On the main screen, Kethmore could see the battle raging on the planet's surface. Human defenders moved with professional military precision between positions that had been invisible just hours before. Their equipment was more advanced than Zephyrian intelligence had suggested, and their tactics were far superior to anything expected from civilian farmers. "Sir," interrupted the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Put it through." The screen changed to show a human woman in military uniform standing in what was clearly a sophisticated command center. Behind her, Kethmore could see advanced tactical displays and communication equipment that rivaled anything in the Zephyrian fleet. "Admiral Kethmore," the woman said calmly, "I am Colonel Sarah Martinez, commanding officer of the Human Colonial Defense Force Kepler 442b operations. I believe you have made a serious miscalculation." Kethmore stared at the screen in shock. "You're supposed to be farmers." Sarah smiled coldly. "We are farmers, Admiral. We've been growing something very special for the past 3 years, and today we're finally ready to harvest it." Behind her, tactical displays showed the locations of Zephyrian forces across the planet. Every enemy position was clearly marked and targeted. The humans had been tracking the alien invasion fleet since the moment it arrived in the system. "What do you want?" Kethmore asked. "Your immediate withdrawal from this system," Sarah replied. "Or we can continue to demonstrate just how productive our farming operation has been." As if to emphasize her point, explosions erupted across the planet's surface as more Zephyrian positions fell to the hidden human military forces. Admiral Kethmore realized with growing dread that his empire had made a terrible mistake. The peaceful farming colony was actually the most sophisticated military deception he had ever encountered, and the harvest had only just begun. The battle for Kepler 442b raged across 3 continents as Zephyrian reinforcements poured down from orbit, only to be systematically destroyed by the human defenders. What had begun as a simple invasion had become a nightmare for the alien forces. Captain Zextel crouched behind the wreckage of his assault shuttle, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Around him, The empty field where they had landed was now revealed as an elaborate killing ground. Hidden weapons positions fired from concealed bunkers while human soldiers moved through underground tunnels that connected defensive positions across the entire area, squad leaders report. He called into his communicator. The responses were grim. Of the 40 warriors who had landed with him, only 12 were still combat capable. The rest had been killed or wounded in the initial ambush. "Sir," called Sergeant Vorth from a position behind a destroyed piece of farming equipment. "The humans are moving to encircle our position. We need immediate extraction." Zextel tried to contact the fleet, but his communications were being jammed by human electronic warfare systems. Somewhere in the distance he could hear the sound of approaching human vehicles. The machines that emerged from the crop fields looked like the farming equipment they had observed for months, but now Zextel could see their true nature. The combine harvesters moved on heavily armored treads and mounted weapons that could penetrate Zephyrian battle armor. The irrigation equipment deployed automated gun systems that tracked and engaged any movement. "How did we miss this?" Vorth asked as they watched a human tractor transform into a mobile artillery platform. Zextel had no answer. The intelligence reports had been clear. These humans were peaceful farmers with primitive technology. But the reality was completely different. Every piece of equipment had a hidden military purpose. Every farming activity had been military training in disguise. A human voice called out from the surrounding positions, speaking in accented but understandable Zephyrian. "Alien soldiers, you are surrounded. Surrender now and you will be treated according to the Galactic Conventions of War." Zextel looked around at his remaining warriors. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and trapped in an enemy stronghold that had been perfectly disguised as farmland. Resistance would only lead to more casualties. "We surrender," he called back. Across the planet, similar scenes played out as Zephyrian forces found themselves overwhelmed by an enemy that should not have existed. The human farmers fought with the skill and coordination of elite military units because that was exactly what they were. In Settlement 7's command center, Sarah Martinez coordinated the defense of multiple battle zones simultaneously. Her staff worked at consoles that had been hidden beneath false floors in what appeared to be agricultural buildings. Status: report from all sectors, she requested. Northern settlements report complete. Neutralization of enemy landing. Forces, replied Marcus Chen. Southern sectors have contained alien reinforcements at designated kill zones. Western settlements are mopping up remaining resistance. Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The plan was working perfectly. Every aspect of their 3-year deception had been designed. For this moment, the crop rotation schedules had actually been training rotations that ensured every human on the planet was cross-trained in multiple military specialties. The farming equipment had been dual-purpose machines capable of both agricultural work and military operations. Even the livestock had served a purpose, providing food while masking the heat signatures of hidden weapons, systems. "Admiral Kethmore is requesting another communication," reported Elena Vasquez from the communications station. Put him through. The main screen activated to show the Zephyrian admiral on his flagship bridge. Behind him, Sarah could see the frantic activity of officers trying to coordinate a response to the unexpected resistance. "Colonel Martinez," Kethmore said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "You may have surprised us with your deception, but this is far from over. I have 3 battlecruisers in orbit and enough firepower to reduce your entire planet to rubble." Sarah remained calm. "Admiral, I don't think you understand the situation you're in. May I suggest you scan the rest of your fleet?" Confusion crossed Kethmore's features. "What are you talking about?" "Check your sensors, Admiral. Look for objects that don't belong in your formation." On the Zephyrian flagship, the tactical officer's face went pale as he studied his displays. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple unknown contacts within our fleet formation. They appear to be small craft, but our sensors didn't register their approach." Sarah smiled. "Those would be our harvesting ships, Admiral. We've been growing more than crops on this planet." The truth was even more shocking than Kethmore had imagined. The human supply ships that had been arriving monthly for 3 years had not just been bringing farming equipment and new colonists. Hidden among the legitimate cargo had been components for a fleet of stealth attack craft. While the Zephyrians had been watching farmers work in fields, human engineers had been assembling military spacecraft in underground facilities. The ships were small, fast, and designed to be invisible to alien sensors until they were close enough to strike. Impossible, Kethmore breathed. Our scanners would have detected any military buildup. Your scanners were looking for the wrong thing, Sarah explained. You expected to see military bases and weapons factories. Instead, you saw farming equipment and agricultural storage facilities. You never thought to look inside the grain silos or beneath the livestock barns. The human stealth ships had launched from concealed hangars disguised as agricultural buildings. They had approached the Zephyrian fleet using flight paths that mimicked the orbital mechanics of space debris, becoming invisible among the natural clutter of the star system. Now they were positioned throughout the alien formation, armed with weapons that could cripple capital ships from close range. What are your terms? Kethmore asked finally. Immediate withdrawal of all Zephyrian forces from this system, Sarah replied. No return missions, no surveillance, no further contact. Leave now and your ships will be allowed to depart safely. And if I refuse? Sarah's expression hardened. Then you'll discover that our harvest includes more than just military deception. We've been growing something else during our time here, Admiral. We've been cultivating relationships. Before Kethmore could ask what she meant, new contacts appeared on his tactical displays. Ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system, but these were not human vessels. The newcomers belonged to 3 different alien species that the Zephyrian Empire had conquered in the past decade. Their ships bore the markings of governments that were supposed to have been completely destroyed. Allow me to introduce our allies, Sarah said. It turns out that reports of their extinction were greatly exaggerated. They've been rebuilding their fleets while you thought they were defeated, and they're very interested in discussing the future of Zephyrian expansion. Admiral Kethmore stared at the tactical display in growing horror. His invasion force was now surrounded by enemies both within and without. The human farming colony had been the center of a military alliance that included multiple species, with very good reasons to hate the Zephyrian Empire. How? He whispered. Farmers are good at many things, Admiral, Sarah replied. We're good at growing crops, maintaining livestock, and working the soil. But we're also very good at networking. We've been in contact with your former victims for quite some time now. The truth was devastating. While the Zephyrians had been focused on monitoring human agricultural activities, the humans had been coordinating a multi-species alliance dedicated to stopping Zephyrian expansion. The farming colony had served as a meeting point and communication center for the resistance movement. Your choice is simple, Sarah continued. Withdraw now, or face the combined fleets of 4 different species who have very good reasons to want the Zephyrian Empire stopped permanently. Around the Zephyrian fleet, the Allied ships moved into attack positions. The humans had spent 3 years not just preparing for this battle, but preparing to win the war that would follow it. Admiral Kethmore looked at his tactical displays one more time, calculating the odds of survival if he chose to fight. The numbers were not encouraging. Very well, he said finally. We will withdraw. Excellent choice, Admiral. I suggest you move quickly. Harvest season has officially begun, and we have a lot of work to do. The Zephyrian 4th Fleet retreated from the Kepler system in complete disorder, leaving behind the wreckage of their invasion force and their confidence in military superiority. Admiral Kethmore's final transmission to the Zephyrian High Command would be remembered as one of the most shocking intelligence reports in the Empire's history. The human farming colony was a deception, he reported, as his battered fleet limped toward friendly space. Repeat. The agricultural settlement was a complete military deception. The humans have been preparing for war while appearing to grow crops. They possess advanced military technology, professional fighting forces, and alliance relationships with multiple species we believed extinct. On Kepler 442b, Sarah Martinez stood in what had been revealed as the planet's primary military command center. The facility stretched deep underground beneath Settlement 7, containing advanced communication equipment, strategic planning rooms, and coordination centers for operations spanning multiple star systems. Fleet, status report, she requested from her staff. All human vessels. Report ready for extended operations, replied Marcus Chen. The stealth squadron is prepared for reconnaissance missions throughout Zephyrian space. Our allied fleets are moving to their assigned positions. Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The victory at Kepler 442b had been just the beginning. For 3 years, the humans had been preparing not just to defend one colony, but to launch a coordinated campaign against the Zephyrian Empire. "Activate the network," she ordered. Across the galaxy, similar farming colonies received the signal they had been waiting for. On dozens of worlds that the Zephyrians had dismissed as harmless agricultural settlements, hidden military installations came online. The pattern was the same everywhere. Peaceful farmers working in neat fields suddenly revealed themselves as sophisticated military bases. Grain silos opened to release squadrons of combat aircraft. Livestock barns transformed into vehicle depots. Underground facilities emerged from beneath pastures and crop fields. Each colony had spent years perfecting their deception while building the infrastructure for a massive military operation. The Zephyrian Empire had unknowingly allowed their enemies to establish a network of forward operating bases throughout their territory. In the Zephyrian capital, Emperor Thexmor received Admiral Kethmor's report with growing disbelief. The Empire's military leadership had gathered in the Imperial War Room to discuss the crisis. "How many of these fake farming colonies exist?" the Emperor demanded. General Craxvan consulted his intelligence reports with shaking hands. "We have identified 47 human agricultural settlements within our territory, Your Majesty. All of them show the same organizational patterns we observed at Kepler 442b. You mean we have been watching enemy military bases for years while thinking they were farms?" "It appears so, Your Majesty. The humans have conducted the most successful military deception in recorded galactic history." The Emperor's rage was terrible to behold. How did our intelligence services fail so completely? The answer was both simple and devastating. The Zephyrian Empire had fallen victim to their own prejudices and assumptions. They had expected to see military bases that looked like military bases. When they encountered something that appeared to be agricultural, they had dismissed it without deeper investigation. The humans had exploited this weakness perfectly. They had created installations that were genuinely agricultural on the surface, while serving military purposes underneath. The crops were real, the farming work was legitimate, and the food production was actual. But every aspect of the operation had been designed with warfare in mind. On Kepler 442b, Dr. Amanda Foster reviewed the strategic situation with her planning staff. The woman who had spent 3 years disguising military logistics as crop rotation schedules was now coordinating the largest multi-species military operation in galactic history. Phase 3 is proceeding according to schedule, she reported to Sarah. Our allied fleets are moving into position around key Zephyrian worlds. The resistance movements on occupied planets are beginning their uprisings, and our stealth reconnaissance missions are providing real-time intelligence on enemy fleet movements. Sarah studied the holographic display that showed military operations across dozens of star systems. The network of farming colonies had become coordination centers for a campaign that stretched across half the galaxy. What about the Zephyrian response? They're trying to mobilize their reserve fleets, but they're having problems, Amanda replied. 3 years of our agricultural supply runs have given us detailed intelligence on their military infrastructure. We know where their shipyards are, where their supply depots are located, and how their command structure operates. The humans had been gathering intelligence for as long as they had been maintaining their farming deception. Every supply ship that had brought agricultural equipment had also carried sensors and reconnaissance specialists. Every farming conference had been a military planning session. Every crop exchange program had been a cover for intelligence operations, now that intelligence was being put to devastating use. Human strike teams emerged from their hidden bases to attack Zephyrian supply lines. Allied fleets struck at enemy shipyards and communication centers. Resistance movements on occupied worlds received weapons and coordination from the human network. The Zephyrian Empire found itself fighting a war on hundreds of fronts simultaneously, against enemies they had thought were peaceful farmers or extinct species. Jake Morrison, the former tank mechanic who had spent 3 years disguised as an irrigation specialist, now commanded a mixed squadron of human and alien vessels. His ships moved through hyperspace toward a Zephyrian military depot that intelligence indicated was critical to enemy operations in this sector. All units, prepare for transition to normal space, he announced to his fleet. Remember, hit hard and fast. We want them to know the harvest season has begun. The attack was swift and devastating. The Zephyrian defenders had no warning before human stealth ships appeared among their formations, while allied vessels struck from multiple directions. The depot was destroyed within hours. along with supplies that would have equipped entire invasion fleets. Similar attacks occurred throughout Zephyrian space, as the hidden human network revealed its true purpose. What had appeared to be a collection of isolated farming communities was actually a sophisticated military operation designed to cripple the Empire from within. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Emperor Thexmore watched his empire crumble as reports poured in from across his territory. Worlds were falling to coordinated attacks by species he had thought were defeated. Military installations were being destroyed by enemies who seemed to know exactly where to strike. Your Majesty, General Craxman said quietly, we need to consider negotiation. The humans and their allies have achieved strategic superiority through their deception. Continued resistance will only lead to the complete destruction of our civilization. The Emperor stared at the tactical displays showing the collapse of Zephyrian power across the galaxy. In 3 years, the humans had grown something more dangerous than any military force he had ever encountered. They had cultivated the destruction of his empire while appearing to be harmless farmers. Back on Kepler 442b, Sarah Martinez received the final reports of the day's operations. The first phase of the harvest had exceeded all expectations. Zephyrian military power was being systematically dismantled across dozens of star systems. Colonel, Elena Vasquez called from the communication station, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Zephyrian capital. It's Emperor Thexmore himself. Put him through. The Emperor appeared on the main screen, his proud bearing replaced by the defeated posture of a ruler who had lost everything. Colonel Martinez, he said formally, the Zephyrian Empire requests terms for surrender. Sarah looked around the command center at the humans and aliens who had worked together to make this moment possible. 3 years of perfect deception had led to the liberation of dozens of worlds and the end of one of the galaxy's most aggressive empires. Your Majesty, she replied, I believe we can work something out. After all, farmers are always interested in cultivating peace. The war was over, but the harvest would continue. Throughout the galaxy, former Zephyrian slaves were tasting freedom for the first time in decades. The human farming colonies were revealing their true nature as coordination centers for reconstruction and peaceful development. The greatest military deception in galactic history had succeeded beyond all expectations. The humans had planted seeds of liberation and reaped the freedom of countless worlds. And in the fields of Kepler 442b, real crops continued to grow under an alien sun, tended by farmers who had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one your enemy never sees coming.